Hello, everybody. My name is Cynthia, and this is my awesome group member, Cami. And we have gathered some very interesting information regarding a disease, leprosy. So, I wanted to share with you two stories regarding leprosy to give us a better background. So, our first story is one that you may be familiar with or have heard before. It is a biblical story shared in Luke chapter 37, and is the story of Christ visiting 10 lepers. A leper is someone who has leprosy and experiencing really bad sores all over their body. Their skin had spots, and people thought that it was contagious and that doctors weren't even able to help them. Others in the city often did not want to get sick themselves, so they often feared the lepers. These 10 lepers knew that Christ could help them, so they asked Christ for help. Christ, um, Christ told them to visit the priest in the city, and then he would help them. On their way to the priest, the 10 lepers were healed. However, only one returned to thank Christ. The more we learn about leprosy, the more beautiful the story becomes. It is amazing to know that Christ loves us so much that he will be close with us even though no one else wants to be. The story also tells us that leprosy has been around for a very long time, so it is not a new disease. So it made me think to myself, how long has leprosy been around? And as we know from our first story, that leprosy was around when Christ was living. These other photos are from medieval times and demonstrate similar stories as Christ visiting the lepers. So, as you can see, these lepers in these other photos were also visiting priests, which I find it really interesting how they all kind of relate, tied to each other. Our next story is one more of a fascinating case. So in 2009, anthropologists found the earliest leprosy case in a skeleton that was dated to be 4,000 years old. We know that Christ was here 2018 years ago, so now just imagine 4,000 years ago. This photo has a great indentation of where the individual had suffered leprosy, and I thought it was amazing to share. So the body was found in India, and so yeah, it's interesting to know that this has been along for a long time. So the next thing I want to share is now that we have a better understanding of leprosy and its history, we want to share more of leprosy's etiology, reservoir, and transmission. Leprosy is caused by a bacteria called Mycobacterium leprae. So you can see where the common name leprosy comes from. Leprosy is also known as Hansen's disease because of the bacteria. Bacterial leprae was discovered by G.H. Hansen in Norway in 1873, making it the first bacterium to be identified as causing disease in humans. Leprosy cell structure is actually quite different than most other cells. Leprosy is a weak gram-positive, and so leprosy has two layers. It has an unusual cell wall and a cytoplasmic membrane. The cell wall has a high concentration of lipids called myocholic acid within the peptidoglycan, which is different than other cells. Also, the cell has an wax outer coating, which causes it to resist chemicals and dyes, hence a weak gram-positive. It is also a rod-shaped, so bacillus-shaped. And so in this first photo, I really like it because it illustrates a weak gram-positive, as it is hard to tell there's a gram-positive or negative, and you're able to see the bacillus-shaped bacteria here. As for replication, leprosy replicates through conjugation process. This picture gives us a good visual of how it works, and as we see here, there's two cells. Cell number 1 has a mobile plasmid within the cell, And this mobile plasmid is what holds the bacteria, the bacterial information. So cell number 1 also has a pilus. Once the pilus attaches to another cell, it allows the cells to touch. So once it touches the plasmid, the mobile plasmid shares information with cell number 2. Thus, it conjugates the bacterial information, causing the spread of leprosy.
Hi, I'm Cami Jorgensen. I'll be presenting reservoir and transmission. Cynthia did a smashing job on the interest and etiology of leprosy. Now that we know what causes leprosy, our next question is, where does this pesky little bacteria reside? As Cynthia stated, leprosy dates further back than biblical days. In biblical days, many people thought that leprosy was a punishment for being unclean through sinning, eating unclean foods, or associating with other people who are unclean. Luckily, we have science on our side to set the record straight. It had long been thought that humans were the only natural reservoir for the bacteria M. leprae. However, in 1977, naturally acquired leprosy was found in chimpanzees. 2 years later, in 1979, it was found in sooty mangami monkeys. This spurred the idea that humans may not be the only reservoirs, but that leprosy may be zoonotic as well. The findings did not stop there. Leprosy related to armadillos was first described in 1981 when a Texas rancher with leprosy was thought to have developed the disease through significant contact with armadillos. It took a bit of time for another reservoir to emerge. In 2016, red squirrels in the United Kingdom were found to carry the M. leprae strain of the bacteria. Although there have been no conclusive studies done, it has been suggested that M. leprae may be found in soil as well. Since we now know where the bacteria is found, our next question is, how is this disease transmitted to other human beings? Leprosy is not a highly contagious disease. In fact, susceptibility to leprosy appears to be genetically based, and 95% of all people appear to be naturally resistant to the disease. According to the World Health Organization, it is not exactly known how the disease spreads between people. One reason it is so difficult to pin down transmission is due to the slow-growing nature of the bacteria. It can take anywhere from 3 to 20 years for symptoms to develop in humans, making it difficult to find the source of the infection. Until recently, it was thought that the disease was spread horizontally. That is, you could only get leprosy through direct contact with a diseased person. Now it is thought that leprosy is spread through direct transmission of nasal droplets from an infected person to a healthy individual. This would happen when a person with leprosy coughs or sneezes and another individual breathes in the droplets containing a bacteria. Droplets coming into contact with open skin wounds might be another form of direct transmission. The Center for Disease Control notes that prolonged close contact with someone who has untreated leprosy over a period of several months is another way the disease is transmitted. Vector transmission, which is transmission through insects, has not been ruled out. Zoonotic transmission, which is transmission via animals, such as those known reservoirs, is very rare. Some people may think knowing how a disease is spread is a scary thing. Cheer up, we also know there are several ways this disease is not transmitted. According to the CDC, you cannot get leprosy from casual contact with a person who has it. Examples of casual contact would be shaking hands or hugging, sitting next to each other on the bus, or sitting together at a meal. Leprosy is also not transmitted from mother to unborn child during pregnancy, nor is it transmitted through sexual contact. Indirect transmission or transmission via door handles, telephone receivers, etc. is also not possible. This concludes our presentation.